G'day everyone, and welcome to another very belated episode of the AustrAlien Podcast. As always, I am your host, TJ Hollis, and with me is the voice of the people, Mr. Shawn Mills. How you doing, Shawn? What's the poop?
Oh, mate, what's the poop? Well, first of all, I'm doing great. Where to start? You know, we had the reason we were so late was really nothing happened. Busy with life and whatever, but really there wasn't an awful lot happening in politics in the world. Or
yeah, it seems, ever since the whole Citizenship Seven, as they're calling them, as soon as that got sent to the High Court, it's like politics in Australia almost died down.
Yeah,
like
crazy.
It's like everything paused.
Yeah. Maybe we've become immune to the stupidity of Donald Trump, that American politics doesn't interest us as much. I don't know.
I'm not 100% sure about that. I mean,
yeah, well,
I think the only real proof of that we're going to see is the next, set of elections in wherever, which is going to be Queensland.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if we see more populist parties such as, One Nation and the Australian Conservatives, if we see those sort of people getting a significant amount of votes, then it's obviously we haven't been inoculated to this wave of populism that's come over from America.
Well, Queensland election, that was called. That's exciting.
Yeah, that was called. Personally, I think that was a very silly move politically by Miss Palaszczuk.
Well, it's her first move in 3 years. You've got to give her some leeway. First thing she's done.
Well, it's her first thing she's done in public anyway.
Yeah.
Everything about that Queensland government seems to have been done behind closed doors, and that's been a little bit worrying for me, and I think that's probably should be worrying for most people, regardless of where you sit politically.
Yeah, no, that's politics in Australia really at the moment, isn't it? So
very much so.
But we won't get into the Queensland election because we might cover that with some special episodes in the near future.
I'd actually really like to. I'd like to, as we come up into the election, I'd like to perhaps look at a few of the important key swing seats.
Yep.
I think that might make for some interesting content. So Everybody listening, please let us know if that's something you want to hear more of. If you want us to break that down a bit, tell us. Let us know what you want to hear us talk about. We're more than happy to take on board your feedback.
Absolutely. Well, where do we want to start tonight, Tej?
Well, we did very briefly mention the Citizenship Seven. So now that we've got a resolution to that, I think we should probably discuss that a little bit, especially since we've already spoken about it in the last 2 episodes we've released.
Absolutely. First of all, I think we should both note that whichever journalist coined Citizenship 7, brilliant, thank you, best one since Watergate.
Absolutely. That has been absolutely fantastic, to have something that it just rolls off the tongue, it's a lot easier than the seven politicians who citizenship issues got them sent to the High Court.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of doesn't flow. But Citizenship 7, I hope you got at least a bottle of scotch for that.
Well, here's hoping. All right, Pulitzer. Maybe not.
I think that might be a little bit hyperbolic there.
Maybe.
Anyway, so for those who haven't really been keeping up with it, this has been pretty much the biggest political story in the country for the last 3 or 4 months. And so 7 politicians, 6 senators and 1 in the House of Reps, all had issues where they were sent to the High Court over dual citizenship.
Indeed.
And they were Deputy Prime Minister Barnaby Joyce, Senator Fiona Nash, who are both from the National Party, and in fact are the leader and deputy of the National Party.
Correct.
There are the 2 former Green senators, Scott Ludlam and Larissa Waters.
Yep.
Who
both deputy leaders of the Greens.
Yep. One Nation Senator Malcolm Roberts.
Yep.
National Senator Matthew Canavan.
Yep.
And Independent Senator Nick Xenophon.
Indeed.
Now, Senator Canavan even was the Minister of Resources and Northern Australia.
And is again.
Oh, spoiler alert, Shawn.
Spoiler alert, I'm sorry.
Well, we might as well just jump straight into the results with Matt Canavan, who the High Court found to be eligible. So he is able to resume his position in the Senate. He's resuming his previous posting as Minister for Resources and Northern Australia.
Yep.
He also, I do believe, is the minister in charge of looking after Central Queensland, where we both reside.
I don't think that's an official thing. I know from experience, and I'm sure the Labor Party do this, but the Coalition generally try to spread their senators out around the state, because they represent the whole state, but they try to spread them out around the state so they can utilise the offices basically for election purposes.
That is a fair call.
Yeah. So, I mean, Matt Canavan, the court ruled that Italian laws had changed that effectively meant someone could hold citizenship for many, many generations, unlimited generations, if no one in the family had renounced it. So you can have people 6-7 generations removed from Italy and technically be a member of, a citizen of Italy. So I think they just ruled that was unreasonable that's an unreasonable requirement to know that. So, because when you're that far removed, how would you know?
Exactly. Okay, so sticking with the Nationals.
Yep.
Let us go to former Deputy Leader Fiona Nash.
Yep. Gone. Disqualified by the High Court. She's been disqualified. She cannot, because she's in the Senate, she can't recontest her spot. Correct.
And therefore has lost her position as Deputy Nationals Leader and has also lost her position as the Minister for Regional Communications.
Mm-hmm.
Her reaction to being disqualified was, and I quote, "I will continue to fight for rural and regional Australians no matter where my life path takes me."
Okay, fair enough.
So, yeah. Ms. Nash referred herself to the High Court after finding out she held dual citizenship with Britain due to the descent of her father. And the seat is now likely to go to the next person on the New South Wales Coalition ticket, who I believe is the Liberal Holly Hughes, off the top of my head.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting thing internally with the Coalition, because from what I understand previously anyway, the Coalition agreement is based on percentages. So if you've got 80% Liberals and 20% Nats, then in the ministry you have 80% Liberals and 20% Nats. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see what happens there, whether Holly Hughes takes a seat as a Liberal or whether she says no thanks and it goes to the third person on the ticket, who might possibly be a Nat. So,
in saying it, that's just the seat that's going to Holly Hughes. That's not the ministry.
It's not the ministry, that's right.
And I absolutely believe that the Coalition they wouldn't give the ministry to somebody as inexperienced as Miss Hughes. Anyway, they would give it to somebody who is a bit more senior, and they would look for it to be a national.
Yeah, but the problem I think would be is if that person sat as a Lib, a Lib replaced a Nat, that would change the ratio. It wouldn't be 80-20 in my hypothetical. It might be now 85-15, which means the Nats might get less representation around the cabinet table.
But again, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's like the Senate seat would go to Holly Hughes, but the ministry and the seat in the cabinet wouldn't go to her. They'd find another national for that to take Ms. Nash's place.
Anyway, regardless, it's going to be interesting.
Because we don't have to. They don't have to give the portfolios straight to whoever replaces Ms. Nash as a senator.
That's right. Yeah.
All right, and sticking with the Nationals. And I am looking at a website with a very, very, very angry Barnaby Joyce.
Yep.
And so he is the only one. It's very important to note that he's the only one in the House of Reps who has been affected by this.
Yep.
So he can actually recontest his seat. His seat will automatically go to a by-election.
Correct, yeah.
As opposed to all the other people affected in this, where, because there are Senate seats, their seat is actually a party seat and will just go to the next person down the line.
Drops down the list, yeah.
So Barnaby Joyce, disqualified, leader of the National Party, still technically the leader of the National Party unless he loses this by-election.
Yep. He was reconfirmed as leader just a couple of days ago. So that's a bit like Campbell Newman being leader of the LNP in Queensland when he wasn't in Parliament.
Exactly.
I guess, but anyway. It's a bit
But anyway, he was our Deputy Prime Minister as well, which is very important to notice, especially with the timing of this, because this was announced, the High Court ruling was announced the day before Malcolm Turnbull went overseas.
Correct, yeah.
So the next two people who were actually on the list to take over as acting Prime Minister in his place were both disqualified. So it's very interesting to, I'm, off the top of my head, I'm not sure who ended up being tabbed.
Julie Bishop.
Julie Bishop?
Is acting Prime Minister at the moment, yes. She's Deputy Liberal Leader, so I don't think, because the Nats tapped Barnaby as leader, they probably don't have... Oh, they do. They've got another guy. They've got a guy that they tapped in Parliament as their parliamentary leader. But Nigel Scullin, I think it is. Yeah, Nigel Scullin. So, but I think it was all... they obviously just had a couple of handshakes behind the door and said, Julie Bishop's probably the most senior person here. Let's just give it to her. So,
which, regardless of where you sit politically, that's probably a good move.
Makes sense. You don't want a backbencher, basically. Exactly.
All right, so, Mr. Joyce has been disqualified from Parliament, as we said.
Yep.
He will he'll face a by-election in the New South Wales seat of New England, which was his running seat, and that's scheduled for the 2nd of December.
Yep.
Now, what I found very, very interesting is after vehemently fighting this and saying there's no way I could have known that he was a New Zealand citizen by descent of his father, after arguing it for months and months and months that there's no way he could know, he then came out and said that he was expecting it, that he was expecting this ruling.
I think there's a bit of just wordplay in that, because I think basically, he's just being a pessimist in his own mind to a great degree, but you've got to put a good face on these things.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
I very much appreciated that he said he wasn't going to, I quote, cry in his beer.
Yep.
Unquote.
Such a Barnaby line, that one, isn't it?
That's a very much a Barnaby Joyce line. And, he's also said that he's planning to stay humble and work hard.
Yep.
Which, good for him.
Yep.
He's, whether you agree with his policies or not, whether you agree with anything that he's done or not, the fact is I do believe that he's somebody who is being a politician for the right reasons.
Yeah.
It's because he believes in what he's saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree
and
with that.
he thinks that no matter... He thinks that the way he wants to change Australia is he's doing it for the benefit of Australia.
Yeah.
Which, that is all you can truly ask for anybody.
That's what you want from everyone, isn't it? That's what you want from all of your politicians, even if you don't agree with them.
Exactly. That they've got the country's best interest in heart. And whether you agree with the way that they're doing it, or even if, whether you agree that what they think is best interest or not, as long as they believe they're doing it for the best interest.
Yeah, that's right.
Because that's what you want in politics. You don't want a politician who's there because they care more about their career than their country. And one thing I will say about Barnaby Joyce is, for all his faults, he's certainly not someone who's putting career before country.
Well, you got to admire Barnaby to step out of a safe Senate seat and contest. At the time, he was going to run. I know Tony Windsor retired before he had a chance to run against him, but he had to contest. He was planning on. He stepped out of that safe Senate seat and was going to contest against a very popular independent in the House. So,
yep.
Interesting thing is, I mean, the big upshot of this by-election, of course, is that Tony Windsor has said he's not going to stand again. I would put, dollars to donuts. I think Barnaby is going to walk home in that by-election. I don't think that's going to be an issue, regardless of what the media's been saying and whatever. I don't think it's going to be an issue.
Well, it's a fairly safe...
Oh, it's more than fairly. I'm just looking at the results
safe.
From the last election. He got over 52% of the primary vote on his own.
Yeah.
And that's against Tony Windsor, who ran as the independent, and the second place, who got nearly 30%. And he's Tony, I believe, would take votes from Labor and the Nationals. Labor polled 7% in that seat. So you add Labor, the Greens polled less than 3%. We're not even at 10% yet. Pile of other... Okay, so then your sort of conservative ones, country-minded, whatever they are, Christian Democrats, Liberal Democrats, a couple of other independents, Online Direct Democracy Party. There you go, that's an interesting one. They got 800...
Oh, are they now, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're the party that has said that they were that their vote was going to be done online and that they would vote with whichever way their online polls swang. Am I correct?
Yes, you are absolutely correct.
Which I think is a very interesting way of doing it. I do not think it's a very good way, personally.
Well, you know what? We've had since... When did John Howard lose? 07?
Yep. Kevin 07.
Yep. So in the 10 years since John Howard lost, we've had governments which have run based on opinion polls, and look how well we've done. So,
yes. It actually reminds me, I watched the latest episode of the TV show The Orville this morning, which I know you're actually a very big fan of as well.
Huge fan of The Orville, yeah.
And this actually ties to that party very well, because in this episode, the concept was, and I'm going to do my best to not spoil anything for you, Shawn, because I don't know whether you've seen this episode as of recording.
I haven't seen this week's, no.
Okay. Well, the concept is they've found a planet which is similar to 20th century Earth, but it is a pure democracy where everything is decided, where truth is decided by upvotes versus downvotes. And the more downvotes you get, the more you are shunned by society.
Okay.
And if you get over 1 million downvotes, you're officially a criminal and are arrested. And if you get to 10 million downvotes, they basically lobotomize you to correct your personality.
Yep. Okay.
And
I love Seth MacFarlane.
Oh, absolutely. And it was, as I said on Twitter, I tagged them on Twitter, I said, thank you for creating such an episode that is so very poignant and yet also nightmare fuel.
Yep.
Anyway, we've digressed enough.
Yep, that's all right.
Just a little quick shout out. Thank you to anybody who hasn't seen The Orville yet. Absolutely watch it. It is as much as it puts itself out as a comedy, it is certainly more Star Trek than Galaxy Quest.
Yes. It's in the vein of Galaxy. You know what? It's Star Trek Next Generation with a bit of Seth MacFarlane, Family Guys type humour in there.
Absolutely.
But not enough to overpower the show. It's not Family Guy where it's a gag after gag. I must admit my favourite scene in that show is the very first scene where he walks in on his wife having the affair with the blue alien.
Yes. Yeah, that was very interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, so back to the topic at hand.
That's the
Our next person is Senator Malcolm Roberts from the One Nation Party.
Yep.
It is quite obvious if you've been listening to our shows that I have a very low opinion of the One Nation Party.
Yep.
And, not to jump on the whole bashing bandwagon, but if Barnaby Joyce if the Greens did the ultimate professional face about this situation and handled it with tact and aplomb, Malcolm Roberts was their polar opposite.
Oh, yes.
He did the equivalent of the 3-year-old boy throwing a tantrum in the supermarket.
Yep.
And he is now being disqualified by the High Court because he was born in India.
He's literally born himself overseas. And literally signed a form in his teenage years to become an Australian citizen. How can he not know that he's a dual citizen?
Well, even during the process, he said multiple times that there is no way he could have known, and that he took every reasonable step to renounce his British citizenship.
Yep.
Yet even after being elected, he was still sending messages to the British authorities that literally said the words, "Am I still a British citizen?" So not only has he been found guilty in this case, he has also absolutely lied to the Australian public. He has lied to absolutely everybody about this, and it is most blatant. However,
I'd like to quote something. I'd like to quote something off the ABC website about this one. Senator Roberts' lawyers argued his case was the strongest of the 7 because he had at least made inquiries to UK authorities about his status, however comically misguided those inquiries were found to be.
You're right, that's a very good quote.
I love that. That is awesome journalism.
Very well done, very well.
So, again, recount on that, and next person on the ticket.
No, hold up. We still got a little bit more with Malcolm Roberts here.
Oh, yes, of course.
He has a future in politics still. He, having been kicked out of the Senate, he is now to contest the seat of Ipswich for the One Nation Party at the Queensland state election. For those who don't remember Pauline Hanson's first go-round as an independent, she was elected in the seat of Ipswich. She still owns businesses in the seat of Ipswich. So Ipswich is actually the headquarters of the One Nation Party, and the closest thing that very minor party has to a safe seat.
Well, the closest thing is still very interesting because that is held by... The LNP held it between 2012 and 15, but Labor has held that seat since the 80s. Because remember, of course, just to clarify that, Pauline Hanson was federal, and she was the federal seat of Oxley, which actually incorporates this state seat. So this is the heartland of her former seat.
Thank you for that correction. Thank you.
I am just not 100%... I don't know how he's going to go. I really don't know how he's going to go because I think it depends on how One Nation's going to run in this state.
Well, I put him as very analogous to Donald Trump.
Oh, holy crap. Labor holds that by 16%. That's a big margin to overcome.
That is a big margin to overcome.
Yep.
However, I think Malcolm Roberts very much can spin this whole debacle into a Trump-esque populist.
Look, it's given him profile.
It's given him profile. It's given him Q rating beyond belief that he never would have had otherwise. One Nation is a party that markets to the disenfranchised and the populist, the right-wing populist vote. And now he can now spin this as, look at me, I was actually in the right, because he has come out and said that he is not, and I quote, "I am not sorry. The fact that they have ruled the way that the fact that the High Court has ruled the way it has proven that I was right." I am absolutely not sorry.
Oh, wow.
And so this
is he the best One Nation candidate ever?
He is the prototype.
He is.
He is absolutely the prototype. And this is why I compare him so much to Trump, is because he is a right-wing populist candidate who is going to market himself directly at anybody who is disenfranchised on the right with politics and politicians in general. He's now going to play the cards of, look at me, they bullied me, they didn't want me in their club because, they didn't want me, they don't want people like you and me, so let's kick them while they're down. And for that reason alone, I believe he is going to take a significant percentage of votes, particularly from Labor, but also from the Nationals.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see what happens there.
Absolutely.
I mean, we'll get into the Queensland state election, but I've got a few reasons why I'm a bit up in the air about Ipswich.
I look forward to recording that episode. So next on our list is the independent Nick Xenophon, leader of the Nick Xenophon team.
Yep. And
he was found eligible.
He's a winner.
He, as that ABC article said.
Love it.
I really didn't like them describing them as winners and losers. I really didn't like that.
Wow.
But that's my personal thing. Anyway, with Nick Xenophon, it doesn't matter.
Yes, exactly. It doesn't matter. He's quitting anyway. It doesn't
matter in the slightest because he's quitting because he wants to run in the South Australian state election.
Yeah. Let me just ask you a question about him. Now that Xenophon's gone, well, let's just pretend he's already gone, but, now that Xenophon's moving on, do we think that Xenophon team will have any luck in the Senate without him there?
Well,
because it's a vanity party running on his name.
I don't believe they're a vanity party. I believe that it's as I believe with everybody who names a party after themselves, that's a stupid move.
Yep. Well, that's my definition of a vanity party. Name it after yourself. That's pretty vain.
Yeah, but I think they've got a lot more that they're actually trying to say and do.
Yeah.
Just they went the easy route of naming themselves after a person.
Yep.
Instead of figuring out exactly what their core beliefs were and naming them after that.
It's because they don't have core beliefs, but okay.
I believe they do have core beliefs, it's just we don't really know what they are.
Well, if we don't know what they are, they don't have them.
Well, to me, that just means they've done an incredibly poor job of branding and an incredibly poor job of, of advertising.
Hmm. But, they got 3 people up in South Australia last time, so I guess maybe they do it well down there.
They possibly do. Either way, his position in the Senate will be filled by another member of the NXT party, which hasn't been announced at the moment, but apparently they've culled it down to 3 other people.
Yep.
But, again, it's pretty... I don't know, part of me is very disappointed that... on a personal note, that Senator Xenophon is quitting the Senate to run for a state election. I believe, he was elected, so he should stay that term.
Yeah.
In this, true. There are reasons why you would give it up.
Yep.
For, to look after your family, there's family reasons, personal reasons. But... To take a different position in politics is not one of them. Anyway, next on the list...
Got to win, doesn't he?
He's got to win.
Next on the list.
Next on the list is the last 2, which is Scott Ludlam, who was a senator in Western Australia for the Greens.
Mm-hmm.
He's already resigned from Parliament. He was the first person who set this whole ball in motion.
Yep, thanks for that, Scott.
We said on the last 2 episodes that whether we agree with the Greens' politics or not, I personally do in a lot of cases. I know you don't. But whether you agree with them or not, they handled this with tact and aplomb, and they did the right thing.
I agree they handled it with tact and aplomb. I don't think they did the right thing, though. I think they should have stood there until the court had made a decision. Regardless. I mean, the seats are going to be empty anyway, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Anyway.
But
whatever.
there was still always the possibility that if the court ruled in the favour of Ludlam and Waters, that they would have been able to just jump back into those seats.
Well, would they? Because they'd resigned.
Yes, they would. They would have been given a grace period because of it.
Okay, fair enough. Well, if that's the case, then it's all sort of immaterial whether they resign or not, eh?
Yes. But the fact that they did it as a symbolic gesture, I think, was a good...
Yeah. Well, that's true. It is the Greens. They're all about symbolism.
Yes. But anyway, the next candidate on the West Australian Greens ticket is Jordan Steele-John, who is a 23-year-old student.
Yep.
So that should be very, very interesting. He has very big boots to fill because whether you like him or not, like his policies or not, Scott Ludlam...
He's a parliamentary performer. He's a performer. Yeah.
He leaves a very big hole.
Yep.
He certainly does. He did a lot of work. He absolutely did a lot of work, and he was very, very public. And, he was certainly the breath of air that a lot of Greens voters across the country relied on.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know my opinion on the Greens, but putting aside policy on a purely political level, how Scott Ludlam was not leader and Larissa Waters deputy leader, or even the other way around, is beyond me.
Well, they're both co-deputy leaders.
Yeah, but
behind Richard Di Natale.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean much.
Or Richard Di Natale if you're George Brandis.
Well, not anymore. He apologised.
Or is that George Brandas?
Oh, that was gold.
That was certainly that was certainly funny viewing. Anyway, the next, while we're on the Greens, is the last candidate, Larissa Waters. And Miss Waters is a Queensland Green senator.
Yep.
She resigned after discovering she held dual citizenship with Canada.
Yep.
And she's most likely to be replaced with former Democrat Senator Andrew Bartlett.
Yep.
And she has announced that she is going to run for pre-selection in the next federal election.
Well, that's good because that'll put her, from the point of view of the Greens, because that'll put her on the opposite ticket, because to Andrew Bartlett. Now, Andrew Bartlett, for all his faults, was a pretty good performer in Parliament.
Yes.
Until, as he said, I think he had to battle his demons with that. So, and he's come through the other side, and he was always more a Green than a Democrat anyway, so that's not really going to change much. So, actually, Andrew Bartlett was the Democrat leader for a while, wasn't he?
I do believe he was.
Yeah, so...
Was it before? It was either before or after Natasha Scott Despoja.
Could have been after.
I believe it was after.
Didn't Natasha take over from Meg Lees?
Yes, she did.
So, anyway. But Larissa coming back on the opposite ticket, that's a very, very good political move. So,
absolutely.
And, give her a break. She needs to be the face of the Greens. If there's any Greens party people that might be happening to listen to this, as a Conservative voter, if you want to win more votes in Queensland and Australia, you need Larissa Waters up front. She's articulate and she's knowledgeable and she's passionate about what she wants to do and she's a very good performer in front of the media. You need to have her up front and get rid of the duds you've got there at the moment.
Absolutely.
And just disendorse Sarah Hanson-Young. Just disendorse her, get rid of her.
Now, how much of that last part is... the Conservative in you?
Oh, it's not the Conservative in me; it's the rational person.
Well, we're not going to go. We're not going to go.
We're going to agree to disagree on that one, aren't we?
We're not going to go down that rabbit hole. Anyway, very quickly before we get to move on,
yes,
because you thought the citizenship saga was over, but it's not.
It's never going to be over.
Senate President Stephen Parry has signalled he will resign if British authorities can confirm he inherited UK citizenship from his father. This was just announced today, as of recording. So
seriously?
On the 31st.
I didn't even know that.
Yep, this was announced today on the 31st of October. Happy Halloween. And so Stephen Parry is a Liberal senator. He's also the Senate President. In his words, if he finds out that he's inherited UK citizenship from his father, in his words, I quote, "I would further resign as a senator for the state of Tasmania and not await the outcome of any referral to the High Court, as I believe the High Court has made it abundantly clear what action is required.
Fair enough. I don't want to double guess this stuff anymore, but seriously, he wasn't born in Britain, so he's only going to get citizenship through his father. My father was born in Britain, so I'm in exactly the same situation. I am not a British citizen, but I can apply for British citizenship. Does that count? I mean,
I am not sure.
At the moment, I can enter Great Britain on my Australian passport, and I'm treated as an Australian.
I believe that it depends on when you were born.
Yeah.
Because as always, there's always heaps of these different rules. I know in my particular case, I am the son of an immigrant on my mother's side. She came over from the Netherlands at 6 months old. And, you know, I've personally been trying to get my dual citizenship with the Netherlands, and it has been very, very hard. And it was only 5 or 6 years ago, they actually changed the law for citizenship in the Netherlands. There was a Dutch law that previously said that if you were born between 1971 and 1985 to a Dutch citizen overseas, you were never eligible to be a Dutch citizen yourself. However, in about 5 years ago, they changed that law in the Netherlands, saying that no, people of that age are now eligible to get Dutch citizenship. So it was very funny because my younger brother, who was born in 1989, was eligible for Dutch citizenship for the longest time when I wasn't.
Wow.
It's saying that my mother only got Australian citizenship a few years ago.
Yeah.
After a little bit of a political snafu, where she left the country in the 70s and on holiday with my father and came back, and it turned out that the person who stamped her back in the country used the wrong stamp.
Okay.
So technically, she was an illegal immigrant here for 40 years.
Okay. Cool.
Because somebody didn't sign something correctly or used the wrong stamp.
Yeah.
When she came back into the country after a holiday.
Yeah.
So that kind of says a lot about the fluctuous state of dual citizenships in this country. We're still trying to figure it all out. Anyway, we can finally move on.
One fascinating fact: if this parry goes down, that is 10% of the Senate have resigned since the last election due to these conflicts in Section 44.
Wow, that is a huge number.
That's funny. Anyway, it's not, but
does
it kind of is.
Does that include Senator Malcolm Roberts, who didn't resign and got kicked out?
Oh, I think I'm going to assume that means all of them. The eight, the dirty eight.
The dirty eight.
Oh, I like that, the dirty eight. Yeah. Okay, copyrighted me.
Copyrighted you.
Cool.
All right, so let's move on. Next, I wanted to briefly, and again, very briefly, discuss what I personally think is the biggest bit of world news come in the last month or two, and that is the potential secession of Catalonia.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, obviously, this is something that's been bubbling for quite a while, and you can look at the historic, it being an implication of some of the historical elements of Spain. People forget their last civil war was in the 30s. And that they lived under a dictator for quite a while. Even I'm not actually sure when Franco passed away, but
it was in the 70s, I think, 75.
In the 70s, yeah.
Like that, yeah.
And they haven't truly had a working democracy for the long time, for a long time. If I was to quickly give you a timeline, there was a referendum in January 2015, showed a high support for independence, and the Catalan president Artur Mas, he called for new regional elections, to test for support. And, that happened in September of 2015. And the separatist parties won a majority, pushing on the platform of pushing for independence.
Yep.
In November, they voted for a resolution in support of independence, pledging for more disconnection from the Spanish state in legislation. In December 2015, Spain's Constitutional Court in Madrid struck down the Parliament's vote for independence, saying that, it infringed the national constitution. In beginning of 2016, I think it was January off the top of my head. Anyway, in early 2016, Carles Puigdemont took over as president of the Catalan regional government. In June of this year, Catalan government called for an independence referendum in October. In September of this year, the Spanish Constitutional Court suspended the referendum law, declaring that the upcoming referendum was going to be illegal. On the 15th of September, the Spanish police seized a bunch of ballot boxes that were hidden by the regional government. And on the 20th of September, it was followed up with the Spanish police storming and occupying Catalan government ministries to search for evidence that the Catalan government was trying to hold a referendum. Obviously, protesters took to the street as a response. 1st of October, thousands of Catalan took to the street to occupy the polling stations to ensure that they were kept open amid the police crackdown trying to suppress the referendum. 92% of people who voted in the referendum backed independence. However, it was only a 43% voter turnout, with a lot of the people who were opposing the referendum intentionally boycotting. On the 3rd of October, there were more protests and a general strike across Catalonia. And King Philippe VI condemned the Catalan government on television. On the 11th of October, I know this is a lot of dates and things, but this is not going to be too much longer on this. 11th of October, Spanish Prime Minister Mario Rajoy told the Catalan government they've got till the 16th of October whether they're declaring independence or not, which got extended to the 19th of October. On the 17th of October, and this is something that didn't get a lot of news coverage, was that Spain's National Court ordered the imprisonment of Jordi Sanchez and Jordi Cuixart, who were two of the big leading Catalan separatist politicians. On the 21st of October, so 10 days ago as of recording, the Spanish government suspended Catalonia's autonomy and said that it will impose direct rule from the 28th of October. On the 26th of October, Catalan President Carles Puigdemont opted against declaring the independence himself and left the decision to the members of parliament. On the 27th of October, the Catalan parliament met and unilaterally declared independence by 70 votes to 10 in a vote again boycotted by the opposition. Later that day, Spain's Senate approved powers for the Madrid government to impose direct rule on Catalonia by 214 votes to 47. So this is a very interesting and very deep story, I believe.
Yeah.
And I think that no matter what we say and no matter how deep we get into it, we're not going to truly be able to do it justice.
Not going to scratch the surface. So let me ask you, what's your general opinion? Yes or no, independence?
I don't have a hard yes or a hard no.
Yeah.
I believe there is one part of me that certainly believes that these people should have the right to govern themselves because they have a lot of issues with the way that they're being governed from Madrid.
Correct, yeah.
And, they have a lot of legitimate issues because, they're a different ethnic group for starters. They have a different history to the rest of Spain.
Yeah.
They were a part of the they were a part of Spain that was never what didn't have such a large Muslim influence when the Moors took over historically.
Yep. Yeah.
But they were also the part of Spain that, the part of the Iberian Peninsula, I should say, that had a large Roman population during the Roman Empire.
Yep. Yeah.
So they're very much a different cultural group with different beliefs and different values, and I think that that's something that needs to be, that's something that needs to be acknowledged in this. However, they are also the home of most of the industry and financial parts. Like, they hold most of the wealth for the entirety of Spain in their area. However, you also have to say that, I'm also torn, because on the other side, I'm personally a big believer that national sovereignties possibly need to be dulled a bit, especially in places such as Europe, where a lot of these countries should be getting together and mixing a lot more in order to be able to take a place on the world stage. Because otherwise, you need someone to counterbalance the USA, Russia, and China. And with all three of those countries being quite authoritarian in their own ways, and Europe being more of a liberal democratic part of the world, I think it's very important. It would be a very good move for Europe to unite.
Yeah.
And and part of me believes that while we should respect all of our cultural differences, we're stronger when we are as one. But again, that's very hard to do properly, as all nations with multicultures, be them in the Middle East, be them Australia, be them America, be them wherever, all nations do struggle a bit with multiculturalism, even though it is something that should absolutely be aspired to.
It's a tough one. You're right. It's a really, really tough one. Part of me likes to root for the underdog.
Look, I mean, I absolutely have that as well. Like, when I first started getting into this, following this news, following this story,
yep,
my gut reaction was, good on them. You go, Catalonia. Yeah. You stand up for yourselves. You do it.
Yeah.
Especially since all of the USA, the UK, France, and Italy all came out saying, no, Catalonia has no right to be independent.
Mm.
But there is reasons why all of these countries, all of those four countries, with the exception of the USA, are all dealing with their own separatist movements inside them. The UK obviously with Scotland, but also potentially with Wales. France is dealing with it to a lesser extent with Brittany.
Mm.
And even going back to the UK, there is a very small movement within the Cornwall area to break off as well.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
They're not taken seriously by nearly anybody at all.
Yep.
But there is a movement for it.
Wow.
Italy has separatist movements in Venetia.
Yep.
And somewhere else I was reading about as well, but they have another one in the north as well as Sicily.
Yep.
Sicily wanting to secede as well. So I do believe a big part of this, a big part of the reasons why they've condemned it has come down to their own internal issues. Because, I mean, how could France turn around to the people in Brittany and say, oh, no, it was fine for them, not for you?
Exactly.
How could they do that?
Yeah, that's true. Got to practice.
And I suppose even in the US, there are people in both California and Texas trying to secede.
Oh, I think Texas has been trying to secede since they became a state, haven't they?
But it's only fringe groups trying to get that to happen at the moment.
That's Texas, isn't it? A fringe group.
Texas is a very interesting state, and we're not going to go down that rabbit hole either.
We've got a lot of rabbit holes we're ignoring tonight. It's like a field of rabbit holes.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
Yeah, look, I think
if all of these wormholes we were missing were real, were actual wormholes, we'd have colonized the galaxy by now.
Absolutely. Hey, actually, now I have an interesting fact for you, and this is completely change of subject.
Okay.
I have a very interesting fact for you. Today is the 500th anniversary of the Reformation, when Luther nailed the thesis to the door of the church and said...
And changed world history.
Changed Western history, changed world history. So the start of Protestantism, I guess you would call it, but more importantly, the Reformation. So,
and if you're religious or not, if you're a history nerd, that is super important.
Hey, look, I learned this stuff in school. I don't know if they still teach it. It's not like it's something I learned at a Bible study or something. It's you learn about the Reformation. Well, at least when I went to school, you learned about the Reformation there because it's an important part of Western history.
Yeah, I remember learning about it in year 9 or 10 in social studies class.
Yeah, so very interesting little fact, I thought.
By the way, today is, just in case you didn't hear me the last 20 times, it's, October the 31st is when we're recording this.
Correct, yes.
But that is actually very interesting because without Luther nailing his list of demands on the door of his church. Yep. It's not hyperbolic to say that the world would be completely different.
Absolutely.
Because without this, without Protestantism, we don't have the issues in England with them changing to the Anglican Church.
Mm-hmm.
We then don't have the Puritan drive to America from England, and the Netherlands and other parts of Europe. Keep
in mind the Puritans are sort of the major agitators in the American War of Independence. So,
absolutely.
There's a lot. It's a big important point. Pin in the history of the world.
That you don't have it if some chaplain didn't decide he wasn't happy with the way his pope was going.
Yeah. Didn't like the Catholic Church and said, this is what you're getting wrong.
Yeah.
So good on him. Good on you, Martin Luther. Well done.
So just, I've always thought that was a great story and a great way to think, if you've ever thought, and we all have, that that you can't make a difference in anything, or that your vote doesn't count, or that, you're never going to change the world. Remember, Martin Luther was no one.
Yep.
He was absolutely no one of any import. Nobody in the Catholic Church wanted to give him time of day for anything because they thought he was just silly and an idiot. He was an idiot. He was a radical. No one cares what he's going to think. Let's put him in a backwater town.
That's right. Yep.
And he, by one simple move, by that tiny little power of protest.
Yep.
Because that's what it was. It was a protest. One man's protest changed the entire history of not just the Western world, not just the European world, but changed the history of 3 continents.
Yep. Absolutely. It's amazing when you think about it. And it all came down to money. Well, that's the funniest thing, It
all came down to fighting corruption.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, well, that's right. It was
I think actually, you know what? I think that's a very poignant story, and it's a very poignant time to bring that up, especially when you look at the protests going on in America in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
For anybody who hasn't really followed it, it started last year with the former San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick.
Yep.
Refusing to stand up for the national anthem before games because in order to protest racial injustices from the police force. And that's as a little quick story about it, that changed to him kneeling during the anthem.
Yep.
Instead. And that was actually something that was an idea of a veteran, Alejandro Villanueva, who I believe he's an offensive tackle for the Steelers for Pittsburgh. He said there are better ways that you can protest during the anthem that aren't going to be seen as disrespectful. So Kaepernick flew him across the country. They sat down to have lunch to hash this out, because Kaepernick again wanted to make the point that it's not about disrespecting the anthem or flag. It's about making a protest.
Absolutely.
And, so Villanueva, or is it Villanueva? I'm not 100% sure how it's pronounced. He suggested to kneel during the anthem, because that kneeling is a sign of respect in the military culture. It's what you do. You kneel at the grave of your fallen comrade. You kneel at an injured comrade to help them. He suggested that, and Kaepernick took it on board and changed his protest method to that. More and more predominantly black athletes in the NFL started to take it, until but it was starting to die down this season until Donald Trump opened his mouth and made a big point. That's
Trump, isn't it?
Trump started tweeting. Actually, no. Before he made the tweet, he was having a rally in Alabama.
Yep.
Which side note, don't know why an active president is holding rallies. No one else has ever done that once they've hit president. To
make himself feel good.
But anyway, he made a point where he said, and I quote, "If I was an owner and I saw one of my players disrespecting the flag and anthem like that, I'd say, get that son of a bitch off the field right now. You're fired."
Yeah.
And end quote. And everyone, and basically it hit the proverbial fan in the NFL where, after he followed it up with more tweets about it, saying that they don't have the right to protest and the like, the NFL players that next week all got together. Some of them kneeled, the rest of them locked arms in solidarity. And what was very interesting was a lot of high-profile players, owners, and coaches who supported Donald Trump, including the Jacksonville Jaguars owner who had donated $1 million to Trump's campaign fund, and Robert Kraft and Tom Brady, the owner and quarterback of the New England Patriots, respectively, all took part in these protests against Donald Trump's trying to block their First Amendment rights.
Yeah.
In saying that, the figures have been coming out. The NFL has lost 17% of its viewership because Trump has been urging football fans to boycott the NFL until they make it against NFL rules.
Yeah.
And even this last week, the Houston Texans owner, who has been one of the few owners who's been vocally against it, because most of the owners have said, no, we're fine with it. This one owner who's been vocally against it the entire time said that they can't let the inmates run the place.
Yep.
Which was very bad wording. It may be a common phrase, but incredibly bad wording, especially when you say this in a meeting to the people who are actively protesting the high amounts of African American people in prison in America.
Yeah.
And how the system is based towards, is based around making recidivism easier instead of harder.
Yeah. So, look, one man can make a difference. That is a great example.
Absolutely. And, while I'm not going to say Colin Kaepernick is is Martin Luther there.
Yeah. Hey, it's a good example. It relevant.
Just proves that the power of protest works.
Absolutely.
And
did Martin Luther think that 500 years later, A, we would know who he was, but B, that he's basically changed the entire world history?
Absolutely not.
Because all he wanted to do was say that basically as soon as the coin in the coffer rings, the soul from purgatory springs. So basically...
Yes, because he was against the idea of teeths and indulgences.
Indulgences, yeah. So, which, for those who don't know, short version, the Catholic Church, as the only Christian church at the time, would sell indulgences, which was basically selling salvation and forgiveness of sin. And so that's what Martin Luther was against. That's a very simplified version. But,
yes.
Yeah, so, you know, and that's not... I think you're all corrupt and you're the Antichrist, or, you know, whatever you want to, you know, whatever you would say to, you know, the Catholic Church of the day, which was more powerful than government.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically just saying, I've got this issue, and 500 years later, look at where we are, you know?
Absolutely. So on that note, we're going to finish up here tonight. And thank all of you for listening. And as always, you know, if you could do us a favour, give us a rating on iTunes, it would be very much appreciated. We're starting to see a few people do that, and that really helps us out.
Absolutely.
Like the Facebook page. Go check us out on Twitter. Hit us up. Tell us what you want to hear more about, you know.
Yeah.
Tell us what we're doing wrong. Tell us what we're doing right. But anyway, go out there and protest. Go protest in Martin Luther's honour.
Absolutely.
You know what? Protesting.
Take a stand about something.
If you're not happy, go and do that, man. I've always been a big fan of the power of protest. Go do it now.
It's powerful.
Absolutely.
When done properly, it's powerful.
And as always, from myself, TJ Hollis, and from my lovely partner in crime here, Mr. Shawn Mills, the voice of the people, thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.